anniversary and really dinner, and that's on hold until we can actually return to having memberships where we can have donuts and drink coffee together and the things that we really love to do. And we will get back to that. We're determined, and we will keep this club going and increase our contact with you guys as we go along. These Zoom meetings are not easy for us to do because we've never done them before, the group you're talking to here. And today obviously was long and drawn out, but we're learning as we go. And now I want to hand the microphone over to Joe Sheldon. And before he picks up the microphone, virtually, by the way, there is no microphone. He's just talking into the computer. Joe, one thing about Joe, he's an innovative kind of guy, and he's going to show you one of his innovative approaches to zoom in on things for us. And then he's going to go on and talk about our speaker. So Joe, would you pick up the microphone and I'll unmute?
Yeah, I will, Mike, I will. This Zooming thing is kind of new and different. I'm working on it. I think after a while, I'm going to have to work a little bit more, but I don't know. Can anybody help me get this Zooming thing to work better? I've been working on it for months and I still haven't figured it out. In any case, gentlemen, that was my little bit of humor, which I think is a little wry. In any case, right now, my job here is to introduce our speaker. There is a gentleman that I've known for a while now. Earlier on in his life, he discovered he really loves to travel. Travels a lot. Traveled before he retired. He's now just recently retired. He also discovered that he has a love of wine. So he's combined two things. He's combined his love of travel and his love of wine. And he's gone around the world. He's been to many different places and enjoyed that. Has become something of an aficionado. He's got a great memory, remembers where he's been, what he's done. He remembers the wine that he likes. He remembers the wines that he doesn't like. In any case, our speaker now is going to tell us a little bit about the history of wine, a guy that some of you might know, Peter Wyszynski. Peter, could you please turn on your microphone? Oops, I have to wait. I got to do something here. Okay, Peter, you got to start talking.
I'm on right now. Good. Thank you, Joe. And as Joe, as you said, and as Mike said, our intent today is make this light and easy and relaxing. And I'm going to talk about something that's light and easy and relaxing. With COVID, traveling is near impossible right now, but I'm going to take us on a little tour around the world just to show how wine and grapes have helped empires grow and colonize the world. Despite what Molson Coors would like us to believe, wine is the most consumed beverage in the world and has been for thousands and thousands of years. This first slide shows the oldest winery in the world, dating back to 4000 BC. Joe, can that picture be enlarged? Joe is running the slides.
Peter, that's as large as I can do it this way or that way. Which is better?
Either, okay. As long as everyone can see it. See, this is the oldest winery in the world, and it is dated to 4000 BC. And it was found in the Middle East in Armenia. And for those that don't remember the geography, Armenia is a tiny country on the eastern edge of Turkey. Next slide. The Persia, today known as Iran, was the dominant empire in the known world at that time, 4000 BC. And they developed such a liking for Armenian wine that they demanded an annual tribute or ransom in wine. And these are emissaries from Armenia taking wine to the Persian emperor. Next slide. Another picture on a wall in a temple in Persia, in Iran, showing wine being carried from Armenia. Next slide. In 3000 BC, the dominant empire of the world was Egypt. Because wine resembled blood, many thought it was the blood of gods, and it became very, very widely used in religious ceremonies and festivals. Next slide. This is a drawing that was inside one of the pyramids, and there are many, many pictures of this, of people picking wines, storing them in giant clay jars and pots, and ships carrying wine down the Nile. DNA testing in recent years has shown traces of wine in jars and goblets in Tutankhamun's tomb. The Egyptians brought vineyards and wine to all the areas it conquered as it moved around the Mediterranean. The next slide.
That's what I'm wondering.
This is a wine cellar dating to 1700 BC, discovered in northern Israel, which was conquered by the Egyptians at that time. Next slide. This is a wine press dated to 1700 BC. And as the next picture will show you, the flat upper portion was really a platform full of grapes, and a bunch of men stomping on the grapes, and the juice was trickling down to the left into a large catch basin to gather the wine. So that's how they used to crush wine in the old days. And the book of Genesis in the Old Testament talks of how Noah got drunk on wine after the flood. Now, after Egypt, around 1200 BC, the dominant nation of the world was Phoenicia, today known as Lebanon. And it's on, those that don't remember, it's on the Mediterranean coast just north of Israel, between Israel and Syria. And they traded around the entire Mediterranean. And as they did so, they planted vineyards and all of their trading posts everywhere. Next slide. And this temple in Lebanon was actually the headquarters of the wine merchants of the Phoenicians. The next slide. By 800 BC, the dominant world power was Greece. They loved and promoted wine, and they thought it was something that was very, very important for good health. Next slide. They even named the god Dionysus in honor of wine. Next. Homer was a great lover of wine and wrote many, many articles about wine. Next. As the Greeks conquered and colonized around the Mediterranean, they built garrison towns and planted new vineyards wherever they went to grow wine for their garrisons and for the new colonists. And they went into Sicily, southern Italy, and all the way up to Rome. And you can see in this boat a sailor, and in details there are amphora at his feet full of wine. Next slide. And these are clay amphoras, giant clay bottles that were of various sizes that were used to store and transport wine all around the Greek Empire. Next slide. Around 200 BC, Rome became the dominant world power. Like the Greeks, they adopted wine as a central part of their culture. Next. They created their own god of wine named Bacchus. And as you can tell, in those days, the gods were always very young, fit, and healthy. Next. The Romans believed that wine was a daily necessity for health and fitness. and they recommended that everyone drink wine daily. The average Roman consumed at least a liter of wine per day. And there was a bylaw in Rome that said that slaves had to be given a minimum of 5 liters of wine per week to maintain their strength and vigor to do their job. Next. This is a finding in Pompeii, and wine bars were very, very popular in Rome. And the mosaic on the back of the wall of this bar shows grape picking and people gathering grapes for wine. And the bowls in the front were actually cutouts on this table where they had hot food for takeout. So this was a Roman version of Tim Hortons or McDonald's in the year 50 AD. Next. As the empire expanded along the Adriatic into Croatia and west along the Mediterranean coast into southern France, and Spain, Italy, and Portugal, they had wines to go. And this was all done by the armies moving and colonizing everywhere they went. Now, Roman legions were very disciplined and very, very well treated. Every legionnaire received a daily ration of a liter of wine at noon. When legionnaires retired, they were offered a plot of land in the empire on the condition that they plant a vineyard that would provide wine for the military. As the empire expanded, it built garrison towns that became cities with ceremonial arches. Next slide. Temples, next. Aqueducts, next. Arenas, next. Another arena. These arenas, these pictures are all current. This is an arena in the Avignon that exists today. And all those other pictures were current pictures. So they built structures that have still stood to over 2,000 years. And however, in the late 400s, around 476, the Roman Empire collapsed. And the legions were recalled back to Italy. The colonies became unprotected, and they were repeatedly attacked by Vandals from the north and pirates from North Africa. So these Roman colonies in the south of France and Spain and Portugal became abandoned, and the inhabitants fled into the forests and mountains. And for the next 400 to 500 years, they all lived in tiny villages. Next slide. And I think I must have lost a slide there. That's fine, Joe. We'll carry on here. I was going to say these villages grew into fortified towns with walls and towers and castles. And then by the 9th and 10th century, Christianity arrived into Europe and brought monasteries. And monks in these monasteries grew giant vegetable and herb gardens and vineyards. Next slide. Next slide. Well, this is a monastery. This is actually Glastonbury in England, or what Henry VIII left of it after he decided to dissolve the monasteries. Next slide. Well, this is a monk. I guess that shows a monk drinking a bit of wine. Next slide. This is a monastery wine press squeezing grape juice, which ran down the bottom and out into a big vat underneath. The next. This is a home version for home consumption rather than a big commercial size one. Next. And this is people stomping on the grapes, and the wife throwing grapes into the giant barrel, and somebody stomping while the guy on the right is picking the grapes. And you can see it running off into the wine at the bottom underneath the big barrel. Next. Oh, this is, I guess I had the slides on in the wrong order there, Joe, sorry. As I said, in the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries, as the populations grew, they came back out of the woods and mountains and formed villages, who then built walls and towers and made themselves secure from marauding pirates and vandals from the north. Next. And again, this is another one of the same. And for those who think this is an ancient picture, this is actually a current picture taken 2 years ago of the town of Carcassonne in the south of France, surrounded by vineyards. And those vineyards have been there for 1,000 years. Next. By the 1500s, the world power was Spain. And with Christopher Columbus having discovered the New World, next, the Spanish decided to colonize South America and Mexico. And the conquistadors took fresh water and wine for these long voyages across the Atlantic. And when they got there, they realized that they had to plant vineyards everywhere to provide wine for the return voyages home. And they did this throughout South America and Central America. And if you see the little insert on the left, that just shows Chile and Peru and going right up into Central America and the bottom of California. And next. These Spaniards, for the next 300 years, expanded slowly north up into California and built wineries. And the very first winery in Sonoma, California, was in 1805. So it's not that long ago. Next. In the days of the California gold rush, the Easterners discovered California and came there and brought grapes from the East Coast and started more vineyards in California. And that's all due to the Spanish influence. So next slide. Going backwards in history a little bit, this shows the St. Lawrence. And in 1608, Samuel Champlain established Quebec City. And he planted vineyards on the Ile d'Orléans. And for those that have been there, that's the large island in the St. Lawrence River between Quebec City and Lévis. And he actually planted vineyards there in 1608. The next slide. In the late 1600s, the Dutch became a major power. In 1658, the Dutch East India Company colonized South Africa. And like the Spaniards, they planted vines in the Cape Province to supply wine for the sailors on their long journey back to Europe. Next. In 1788, British ships going to Australia stopped in South Africa and picked up grape cutting to take to Australia for the same purpose, and started vineyards in Australia for the same reason, to supply wine for the ships on the long journey back to England, because wine was necessary along with fresh water for every ship on their many month or many year long voyages. Next. A chap by the name of James Busby, an Englishman who went to Australia, was made the first governor of New Zealand, and he brought grapes to New Zealand and started the New Zealand vineyards. Next. After the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, where the British Navy defeated the combined French and Spanish navies, Britain became the major world power due to it having the most powerful navy. And for those of us who remember during the Second World War in public school, we not only sang God Save the King and the Maple Leaf Forever, we also often sang Rule Britannia. Well, Britannia ruled the waves. And to keep up sailors' morale and stamina and strength, the Admiralty regulations stated that every seaman had to have a daily ration at noon of 1 pint of wine. However, they found that the wine spoiled in some hot climates. So they amended that to also allow, in exchange, a gallon of beer per person. And then later, when they found that beer would sometimes go skunky, they amended that to allow a half a pint of rum per seaman and brandy for the officers. So this is a clipping from one of the Admiralty regulations that stated that they had to have a pint of wine or half a pint of brandy, rum, or Iraq, or a gallon of beer every day at noon. Next. And this is, again, in 1804, a notice from the Admiralty saying that this was now official and that it was going to be, they dropped the wine and it was going to be rum for the seamen and brandy for the officers. Next. And this is a picture around the time of the First World War where they're up for their noon ration of rum. Next. And this is a more current one, or at the end of the Second World War, of doing this. And this tradition carried on over the years, and many people didn't realize that this was a long-standing tradition. And the Royal Navy in Britain finally discontinued this in 1970, so in our recent lifetime. The Royal Canadian Navy continued this until 1972. Something that most people, including most people in the Navy, and I didn't know, was the next slide, that the rum bottled expressly for the Royal Canadian Navy was actually bottled in Waterloo, Ontario. Next. And that's another label of the same thing. And it's the Royal Canadian Navy rum bottled in Waterloo by Seagram's. We could buy at the LCBO under the name of Captain Morgan rum. Next. And for those that weren't in the Navy, it was actually available for other armed forces right until 1972. Thank you, Joe. And gentlemen, that's a little brief history of wine and how it affected empires and colonized the world. Gentlemen. Oh, I forgot my, I had this. Joe, Mike, Dave, I was supposed to wear my travel hat, but I forgot the travel hat.
Thank you very much, Peter. I really do appreciate that. That was just a phenomenal history of winemaking. Gentlemen, I should have mentioned earlier that if you have questions of Peter in his presentation, you have to type them to me in the chat. It was supposed to be Dave Short, but he doesn't have audio working.
Well, is my audio better now?
Oh,
It's good.
Okay.
yes.
I did some troubleshooting here, so I do have 4 questions, and if there's any other questions, you can send them to me, and I'll ask them. But why don't I just start with these questions for you, Peter?
Okay, just a minute, Dave. In order to send the questions, gentlemen, if on the bottom of the toolbar here, there's a thing called chat. If you click on that, a window will show up on your screen, and you can, with your keyboard, type your question and then hit enter or return. and that will send the message to the person called questions, which is Dave, and he will pose those to Dave or to Peter for answers. Thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, the first question is, have you traveled to many of the destinations that you referred to? And I'm obviously not talking about time travel back to ancient Rome. I'm just talking to the countries where you spoke of.
Yes and no. I've traveled to many of them, but I've never been to Armenia, which was the oldest known birthplace of vineyards and wine. And despite my wife's multiple requests, I've never been to South America.
Great, thanks. The next question is, were some of the pictures in the slideshow, I realize some of them were from books, but were some of the pictures in the slideshow taken by you when you were visiting those places?
Yes, well, the ones that I showed are the walled city. That's Carcassonne, which is in the south of France, just inland from the Mediterranean, near Toulouse. And it's a walled city that still looks like it looked back in the year 1200, but it's surrounded by vineyards everywhere.
Right. Next question. Do you have a favorite wine varietal?
I like big, rich, gutsy wines. So a real wine connoisseur, and I'm not one, I just enjoy wine. A real wine connoisseur would probably think it's the wrong thing, but I like big, gutsy wines like Zinfandel or big Shiraz with a lot of flavor and fruit.
Well, I'm the same. The last question I have, I'll go check the questions, the chat room again in a sec, but the last one I have, is there a country whose wines you would rank number one in your opinion for your personal preference?
It changes from time to time. Overall, probably Italy. I find the Italian wines are easy to drink. They're go well with most food. They may not be as exciting as a great first growth of France, or a $300 bottle of California Cabernet, or $5,000 bottle of French Burgundy. But for everyday drinking, and even for a special anniversary or Christmas, I probably find Italian wines the most tolerable.
Oh, that's great. I've checked the chat room here. I don't see any other questions. I'm assuming that's probably because everybody participating today is just getting used to using technology, and perhaps are not familiar with using the chat room to type questions. So Joe, those are the questions that I have.
Thanks, it's Mike Johnston. It's Mike Johnston speaking. I think the microphone's been turned over to me. Sorry to interrupt you, David. It's a little bit of the stumbling and fumbling again. I'm here to thank Peter for his great speech. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've been to a bunch of the places that Peter showed in his pictures, and it brought home a lot to me. One of the things I enjoyed the most about your speech, Peter, which I totally unexpected for me, was that the whole thing about how the Navy ended up with rum after my father used to be in the Navy, and he would tell me about a tot of rum, and I've read about it in history books, and I didn't know what it was. Now, I understand that. Anyway, I'll stop here in order to move on with the time. But thank you again for your speech. The only question I have is how do you do a wine pairing for breakfast? Because I have never got to that one yet. But I'll ask you that in person sometime.
Very easy. There was a book written a number of years ago that said champagne is for breakfast.
That's great. Now, my job is now is to turn the microphone over to Bill Spall, who is also a great winophile. And he actually, I think, Bill, you formed the wine group for the Probus wine group. And I know that's not what you're going to talk about today. I think you're going to talk about something about ways to define a senior, but you're welcome to talk about your wine group a little bit if you choose. I'm going to unmute myself, and Bill, you're.
Can you hear me? Hello. Peter is very modest. Peter's knowledge of wines is unbelievable and very modest. And Peter joined our wine group from Probus, and we have some really, really good people. Don Panagapka, who is an international wine judge, is a member of our group. And we have a lot of people who just didn't know a lot about wine and joined, and I think are enjoying the experience. We have a wonderful time, and we're going to be doing a wine tasting actually on Thursday in the same format. So, but Peter is a walking encyclopedia on wines, and I really trust his judgment, and most enjoyable. And certainly has expanded my knowledge and experiences in wine, which at this stage in life, and given what we're currently going through, is a delightful thing to have. Anyways, I've been asked to talk or chat a little bit about who we are, that is, those of us in Probus. And I would think that if most of us were probably born in the 30s, during the war or just post-war, and that would probably capture most of our members. And it just, when I was looking at that time of period, and I keep going back and I'm talking to both my kids and my grandchildren, and there's a whole new language coming out. And as my grandson would say, Pop, they all called me Pop. Pop, you're just not modern. And that's true, because I have a foot in both, as most of us do. We have a foot in both places. We have a foot in the pre-computer age, if I may put it that way, and we have a foot in the computer age. So this leads to a definition of our language and how much it's changed. For instance, we were born before the pill. Now, when we say the pill, we know what the pill is, but if we said the pill in 1940 or 41, I'm not sure what we would be referring to at that time. There was no such thing as frozen foods. Television actually had been invented, but it was strictly in the laboratories of scientists. It was not in our individual homes. That really didn't happen. I remember we had our first television in about 1953. And we picked up buffalo if the wind was right. Contact lenses weren't even invented at that stage in our lives. Credit cards, can you imagine? Every time I go out the door these days, I check my pockets for what credit cards I'm carrying, and they weren't even invented. And guess what? It was before man walked on the moon. And I can remember that because we were heading home from the cottage and we were trying to get home in time to see that. And I remember racing in the car and praying to God there wasn't an OPP officer along the way. For those of us, we talk about time sharing. Time sharing meant togetherness. Now, of course, many of us have timeshares that we enjoy for a certain number of weeks in the year. A chip. Do you remember chips? I remember chips. Going out into the backyard and getting chips to start the fire. Of course, chips today are a very important part of our computer setups. Hardware meant nuts and bolts. Not today. Software wasn't even a word then. And we know that's an important part of our lives. We got married first and then lived together. How boring. My kids look at me and say, you what? Cleavage was something a butcher did. A stud, something that fastened a collar to a shirt. Going all the way meant staying on the bus to the bus depot. Now, I remember the first LRT in Waterloo Kitchener-Waterloo was called the trolley. We used to go up to Bucks Hill on the trolley. That was a big deal. That was going all the way. Fast food. That was what we ate during Lent. Fast food. Big Mac. That was an oversized raincoat. That's something we drove up to and picked something out of a door and loaded with onions and all the other mustards and all the other goodies. In our day, we mowed grass. We didn't smoke it. Pot was something we cooked in. A Coke was either kept in a coal bin or chilling in our icebox in the kitchen. A joint, that was cooked on Sundays that we had picked up from the butcher shop. We are today's senior citizens, a hardy bunch when you think of how the world has changed and what we're going through now, the experience we're going through now. But times have changed and we've changed with it, and God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. It's Mike Johnston again. I think can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Somebody raise their hand so I know if they hear me. Okay, great. Now, this is the time of the meeting when we're going to take a little break. But before you leave, we were having a practice session to teach people how to use Zoom. And all of a sudden, one of the members got up and left the screen. And the next thing I heard was this wonderful piano music. And it was coming from that member's pitcher who had left the room. And I'm going to ask John Phillips if he would unmute. Good. John, and I'm going to ask John, maybe wave your hand so that you can maybe say something.
Oh, I did something.
Perfect. Good going.
Yep, we can hear you, John.
Okay.
Okay, so what's going to happen here is John is going to play us some tunes for 5 minutes on his piano, and everybody can take a little break, but don't do anything to your computer. Just leave it on. You'll hear the music and get a coffee, whatever you need to do. And then when you hear John playing racetrack music, a special horn at racetracks, you have to come back to your computer. So I'm going to listen for that, and then we're going to finish our meeting off after he's finished. But John's our piano player, so listen to his music.
Everybody got that?
Yes, we've got it. Thank you, John. That was excellent. Would everybody return to the meeting now? And John, I'll ask you to unmute when you can. I mean, to mute when you can, please. Great. I'll give everybody a few seconds to get back to their playing, but we do hope to have John again for our next meeting, and maybe to do that again. And that brings back some of the warmth and feeling we have in our meetings. And John often plays during when we're coming into the club. And I love the music, John. That was a wonderful job. So thank you very much, and excellent. All right. This is the time I get to make some comments, which I've already really made, and my voice is getting boring to me already. Again, the next meeting we're going to have is on October 27th, which is our normal meeting date at 9:30. And we're going to run a full meeting like this. Hopefully we'll be a little smoother, but I think this is not going too badly. We will have a speaker. I think I pretty much lined up a speaker now, and we will be trying to put together a good program for everybody, which with many of the components of our normal meetings. And these meetings now will continue on the last Tuesday of the month, every month, as long as we have to keep meeting this way, which really is indefinite. We have postponed our meetings and physical meetings, which until it's okay to restart. Bill, can you hear me? Bill, put your hand up if you can hear me. Okay, I just want to make sure. I feel like I'm talking. When you do this, sometimes you don't know who's there. We've canceled the Christmas party this year because of COVID. We won't be able to meet with our group. And we were hoping to do our 25th anniversary in the new year, but that's going to have to wait again till it's safe to meet. And we're going to keep looking at that every month when the management meets. We're going to try to look at these things. But one club actually was going to meet this month in another place, and they ended up canceling. They were going to go ahead and then meet. So I don't know of any clubs that are meeting. We're going to keep trying to improve these meetings. And hopefully we can add chat rooms where guys can get together in smaller groups. That's possible on this system. Hopefully, I'm thinking of trying to figure out a way to do 50-50 draws. And we're hoping to do more presentations from our members, because obviously you've seen Peter Wyszynski and the excellent presentation which he did. We have other members who are equally as talented and have things to add, and we're going to be looking for some input from our members. We do Who Am I's, but sometimes it's if people haven't done their Who Am I's, we would appreciate if they volunteer. Don't be afraid to speak. This is not hard to do, and it's a friendly audience. So please send any. If you're interested in becoming involved with this in a small way, please do. We need help. Thank you. Now, I'm going to move on here. Our guest, Inge Ford, who is at this meeting and who's already spoken, she has been helping us get Zoom going in a big time way. But Inge also, when you get to know her and you listen to some of the speeches she's done, Inge has done a very large Zoom conversion for a group. And Inge is president of the, let me get this straight here, I'm sorry. Sorry, my notes are mixed up here. The Waterloo County Quilters Guild. And this is a very large organization of ladies and men, I understand, who basically do quilting and get together and do a lot of projects, including charitable work. So I'm going to mute myself and ask Inge to unmute and talk to us for a few minutes about the potential, about her experience with the quilters group, but also with where we can kind of maybe can go with this, just looking at that, because it's not the same. So Ingi, if I could ask you to pick up, I will mute myself.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm going to share a few slides so that you don't have to look at just me, and I'm just going to go into my slideshow here. I think. Here we are. So as Mike said, I'm the president of the Waterloo County Quilters Guild, and I'm also a member of the Waterloo Women's Sunshine Probus Club. And both of these groups have over 200. Our Quilting Guild has about 240 members, one of which is a man. So we do have some male quilters around. Our group was founded in 1985 with 20 women, some of whom are still part of our group. And really our goal is to promote quilting within the guild and within our region. And every second year, we also host a large quilt exhibit. Our next one is coming in 2021, right around Oktoberfest time. We sure hope we can run it. And we also have a strong community outreach program. So our transition to Zoom, I'm going to talk just a little bit about that, because every Probus club, every service club has gone through exactly the same kind of journey. When COVID first arrived, it was back in March, and like so many other organizations, we had to make a quick decision. Do we continue with our March meeting? And we have two meetings because we are so large. We have a meeting in the afternoon for mostly our retired members, and then we have another one in the evening for those who are not yet retired. And so this was right around the time where the Prime Minister was telling everyone to get home from their travels, and we were hearing more and more about safety concerns, so things were ramping up quickly. So we did make the decision to cancel our meeting, and it was early on, not many had yet canceled. And then the question became, well, now what? How long do we wait? Is this just going to be resolved in a few months, or is this something that we're going to have to deal with for months? So what was our next step? So we canceled everything until further notice. And that didn't feel right, because it's much like Probus. Do we just put everything on hold and hope that it's not going to have an impact? So then we had to make some decisions, and I was the president, so we had a great executive, but nobody had any familiarity with Zoom. So I started to learn about Zoom, and we were just hearing little bits and pieces of it then. It was being used in educational worlds and so on. My husband's part of the Bits and Bytes Computer Club in Kitchener. It's a volunteer group of people that have a strong interest in computers. They were facing the same thing, and these are computer guys and women. And so they were thinking, well, do we cancel all our meetings or do we continue? And so they also decided that they were going to learn how to use Zoom. So then we researched and just continued to learn a lot more. We trained in our quilt guild. I then took on the task of training our executive, and we began to meet as an executive. And much of what I'm describing is very similar to what our Probus group did in Waterloo as well. We familiarized ourselves with this new tool, and we practiced as many things as we could within our management team. We then made the decision that this is what we were going to do. We didn't ask, we just thought we're going to do it and see how many people join us on our ride. We did survey our membership just as you did, but the survey was basically to find out how many people have some experience with Zoom, and what questions do you have? Because we really wanted to get at what the questions were that people had so that we could help them become part of it. And then we took that giant leap of faith. And at the same time, we had an opportunity to meet with presidents from other guilds around Southern Ontario, and we were all in the same boat. We all had the same kinds of questions. And the Probus folks have done exactly the same thing. Early on, the presidents were invited across Canada to a meeting so that they could share their questions and their concerns. There was also a meeting for program people from Probus clubs from all across Canada. And then because I wanted to see how another group ran their meeting, we had one quilt guild that was ahead of everybody else, and they had a meeting in May and in June. So I joined them to see how their meeting ran. And Mike actually joined our ladies Probus group as a guest to see how it runs. And that's a really good thing to do because you get to see how another group does it. And then we went through the same kind of experience that you did, where we had practice sessions for all our members. And again, because I was the host and I was sort of spearheading it, I also held an all-day sewing event where I could practice all the different elements of Zoom, and we did that a few times. And then we held our first meeting in June, and we invited a guest speaker from Calgary. We had over 100 participants, so we felt that we had experienced success. This was great. And our members were feeling really good about it. They continued to have questions, just as I'm sure you folks may continue to have questions. But then our executive continued to meet in the summer, and likewise with the Probus group, they had a couple of meetings in the summer, and we sent out lots of communication to our members. Then we went full steam ahead, and we decided we were going with Zoom for the whole year. We held 2 meetings in September, and our first guest speaker came to us from London, England. And then our second guest speaker, and we also ran our annual meeting. And then our second meeting in September, we had someone join us from Australia. And that was really amazing to bring a fiber artist to our guild from Australia. And we experienced success, but we also had a few little bumps along the way, and that's to be expected. I could really identify with Dave Short's problems tonight, because when we had the speaker from Sydney, Australia, I'm the one that moderates. I do the job that Joe does, in addition to being the president. And very early on in the meeting, my microphone stopped working. I thought, what am I going to do? Because we didn't have a whole lot of people that were really comfortable with Zoom. But I managed to make someone else the host, and we were able to carry on. And about 5 hours later, with one of the geeks from Best Buy taking over my computer, we managed to figure out what the problem was. So it was an issue with my computer, but we have to be prepared for problems along the way. They can be anything from something small to something a little bit more major, but it's not the end of the world. We just keep going. So we've experienced success, and the Probus Club in Waterloo, they've had their first meeting, and their second meeting is going to be this Thursday. And again, the members of both of these groups are really excited and pleased that we have been able to find a way to meet. One of the other exciting byproducts is that we have people from Nova Scotia who have joined our guild. We have people from Alberta and Manitoba and other areas of Ontario that have joined our guild this year. And because we're virtual all year, it's a great opportunity for these people from other parts of the country to join us if their guilds have not been moving forward with Zoom or some other platform. They're not able to meet. So it gives us a unique opportunity to meet people from all across the country. And we also record our meetings, and we've had, with our last one, we had 108 people also watch the recorded version. So it's quite something to be able to do that. I'm just going to spend a very little bit of time on the outreach program. One of the benefits of being in a guild, much like Probus Club, is the social aspect, but it's also about learning and enhancing our passion for this hobby. When everything shut down in March, our guild began to be approached by many of the organizations within the city. So we started sewing masks. And as about right now, we are almost at 20,000 cloth face masks that we've distributed, and 343 isolation gowns, 864 hospital scrub caps. These have all been made by our quilters. And just to share one story about the cloth face masks, in a span of 1 week, maybe a week and a half, we had our guild and another group that helped us. We made 3,000 masks because we received a request from an Indigenous community north of Sudbury, where this Indigenous community had no hospital. They had their nurse practitioner leave town because of COVID. They had little to no running water. 6 to 8 to 10 people were in one house, and conditions are very poor. And they asked, through the Mennonite Central Committee, they asked if we might be able to make masks, because that was the only way that they felt they could get social distancing. So within, as I said, within a span of a week and a half, we were able to create 3,000 masks that one of the representatives from MCC came down from Sudbury to Toronto, and she picked them up and then took them up. And then we did another couple thousand shortly after that. So our quilters really rallied. One of the reasons that I'm part of a quilting guild is because it's a social group, just like I am with Probus, but we also have an amazing outreach in the community. So this is just a list of what we do. We donated last year 180 quilts to Grand River Hospital. These are lap-size quilts, and the picture on the bottom shows a teenager with a blanket with a quilt. And these quilts are given to children that are fighting cancer or have some other health challenges. We also donated 70 quilts to hospice centers. So whether it's Lessard, Innisfree, Waterloo, and Wellington, or the new Geese Family Hospice that's going to open in Waterloo in November, we donate to Vera's Place in St. Mary's for palliative care. So these quilts are given to these locations, and when and in these palliative care centers, when someone passes away, the quilt that they've used in their room is offered to the family if they wish to keep it. And so we're continually donating to them. We donated 40 touch quilts to the Alzheimer's Society of KW. These are little lap quilts that have different textures so that Alzheimer's patients can experience those textures. We donated 30 memory quilts to Grand River Hospital, and these are for parents who have lost an infant, either through stillbirth or SIDS. And the wonderful news around this one is that they are needing far fewer of these memory quilts than they have in the past, because our healthcare system and medications are just so much improved. And just this month, we already have 22 of 35 quilts ready to be donated to the Village of Tiny Houses in Lot 42. This is, you've probably heard of it in the news, but this is located in an industrial area in Kitchener. It's better known now as a Better Tent City. And these units house people in our community who would otherwise be on the street. So because the weather is now getting colder, we've been invited to donate these quilts. So hopefully by the end of October, everyone in these tiny houses will have a quilt donated by the Guild. Last year, we also donated 100 table runners to the hospice centers to help decorate the room. And we also, like the year before that, donated several hundred meals to not meals. We donated placemats to Meals on Wheels. So I also wanted to just touch base to bring you up to date a little bit on what's happening with Probus across the country, because Dan Clements of the Cambridge Men's Club and Martin Capper, who is with this district, they got together in July, and actually it was Martin who spoke to Dan's group in Cambridge. And together they decided that it would be helpful to help Probus clubs across the country. So they put together a proposal, which was accepted in August, to the board of Probus Canada, where they would implement a mentor program. And so the mission was basically to connect a mentor with any Probus club that wanted help in getting their club up and running on Zoom. So it's basically to help large and small clubs not only survive the pandemic, but to thrive through it, and to bring clubs together so that in ways that we just haven't done before. And so right now there are about 160 individuals from across Canada that have registered for their clubs for mentor assistance. And currently we have between 15 and 20 Zoom mentors. And that's one of the roles that I've been playing. So as we move forward, some of the things that we're going to be looking at as mentors is not only how can we help clubs move from in-person meetings to Zoom meetings, but as the pandemic starts to lift, how do we make the change to go back to our in-person meetings? And will we be looking at some kind of a hybrid so that we can continue to meet in person, but there will be people who may not be comfortable meeting in person? So will they still want to meet on Zoom? Or, and something that our guild is looking at is, will Zoom become a way of life? Because in the winter, January, February, and March, we have a number of snowbirds. And we also have folks that are not comfortable driving in the winter. So will we go to a hybrid model where we're using in-person meetings and then Zoom meetings? So lots to explore yet. So I'm just going to wrap up by saying your Zoom meeting has just begun, or your Zoom journey. And I really want to commend you for taking the initiative, for embracing this new technology and basically taking that leap of faith. Mike and Joe and Dave are off to a great start. You've really got a good team here. And when you first begin this journey, I know that it feels so new and uncertain. If you remember the first time you learned to ride a bike or drive a car, or you had a job change or a career change, everything felt new and different and uncertain. And that's kind of how it feels now. But you've now had your first meeting. You've had great attendance for a first meeting. That's really impressive to have over 60 people. So I congratulate you on that. And I think you're well on your way. And while all clubs would prefer to meet in person, Zoom meetings is our next best alternative for the time being. So I wish you lots of success as you move forward with this. And I'm happy to be of help in whatever way I can as you move forward. So I'm going to turn the microphone at this point back to Mike.
Well, thank you, Inge. I really appreciate your talking to us, and I'm quite interested in, as I've told you before, I was quite interested in the story about the, your quilting guild, and I'm actually quite thrilled that what you're doing in the community. In the interest of time, I think I will move on, but I wanted to say our club usually gives a small donation to the speaker's choice, and we will be making a donation to your choice, and that could be the Quilting Club and its charitable means. So I hope that's okay with you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to let you go, Inge, and now I'm going to introduce Mo Morrow. Warren Stoke can't be here today, and who usually does This Day in History, but Mo Morrow, one of our members, has agreed to do This Day in History. So he's, Mo, if you would unmute and come to the screen, we'll listen into your This Day in History from you. Are you there, Mo?
There we go. Okay, is it unmuted now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Now, I talked to Warren last night, and he was on his way to Kingston to visit some friends. So he passed this on to me and wished me lots of luck. So I will keep this fairly short today for time things. If you're born on October the 6th, a Libra, you are well known for your sensitivity and thoughtfulness. You are very considerate and always take the needs of others into mind, sometimes even more than your needs. You always offer an understanding ear to friends and family members that turn to you with their problems. So that is what a Libra is. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to read a few of the incidents that happened on this day. One of the more important was that President John Kennedy, on this day in 1961, advised the American families to build shelters to protect from atomic fallout that in the event of a nuclear warfare. And just a minute, I'm getting low battery here, so I might disappear. Many Americans prepared for nuclear war by buying up canned goods and building backyard bomb shelters. Okay, can you still hear me okay? I'm losing my battery. Okay, good. One of the things that I guess in 1882 was the first World Series game. Cincinnati beat Chicago 4-0, 1882. Now I'm going to move it right along here, and I'm going to go like in 1889, Thomas Edison had the first motion picture. And I'm going here right along. The Jazz Singer, the movie was in 1927, was the first sound movie. Now I'm going to go right to the very end that I have here, and this is relevant to today's time, and that is in, I got to get the date here. Where is here it is. Well, it's here we are. 2019, tens of thousands of Hong Kong protesters marched in defiance of a new ban on face masks. So that is October the 6th in 2019. So I will close with that event.
Thank you, Mo.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
I can hear you, Mo. If you want to mute yourself, Mo, thank you very much for your help there.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I'm going to go to my closing remarks, and I'll make them very brief. Remember our next meeting, October 27th, 2020, on Zoom at 9:30. Put it in your calendars. There will be something in the bulletin about it. I also will ask you to watch for notices about training for Zoom, where you can learn how to do some of the things that we talked about today, like changing your name and going into those things, because we're going to keep on doing those things, and keep watching for those. And I think we're off to a good start. We had a good turnout today, and I see that the majority of the people stayed till the end, which is a good sign. And I want to thank all the participants. Great job. I think we've got lots to look forward to in the future. And please send me any kind of comments at all that you want to send in to me or Joe Sheldon or Dave Short. Send me any kind of comments at all, pro and con, about this meeting. We'd like to hear them. We want to improve. And again, this was our stumbling and bumbling meeting. So I don't think we did too bad, but anyway, it's a little bit unnerving when you get things going wrong, as Ingy has pointed out. I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and Joe is going to stop the recording and is going to end the meeting for all very quickly. So thank you again.